Hello friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story in which a choir director forced a sick student to compete only for her to return a year later and hand him the most harmonious slice of revenge. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Make me sing when I'm sick? I'll make you retire. A little context before I start this story. For my high school at least, solo and ensemble participation for the first round was mandatory, and the number of kids who went on to further rounds reflected better on the director. To have a kid not participate/drop out was a huge problem. I, 34-year-old female, have never been a petty person, and this was especially true back in high school when this story takes place. But then I, 16-year-old female, was truly quite the doormat. But my one source of true pride, nay, vanity, was my singing voice. I was in the top choir in my school and consistently performed well in UIL and solo ensemble competitions. This was Texas, so I was constantly competing with the best high school singers in the state, and I consistently did very well. I never placed below 5th chair, usually placing in 2nd or 3rd. And then my sophomore year of high school, I developed laryngitis the week of solo and ensemble. I was devastated, but I knew there was no way I could sing and possibly receive a good score, and that was my bigger issue. I wasn't going to F around with my near-perfect solo and ensemble record, so I went to my choir director, who we'll call Mr. Fish, 50-year-old male. Now, Mr. Fish had been teaching at my high school for some years already, and had been doing very well. We'd won competitions, gone on national tours, the whole 9 yards. Great track record. I'd sat out of practices, class, earlier in the week, as well as evening rehearsals. Both I and my mother had sent him emails with doctor's notes about my condition, so I felt no guilt going up to him and telling him, as everyone is loading up the bus to head to the competition, that I needed to back out because I was incapable of participating due to my illness. I'd intended to try, but after checking my voice the morning of the competition, it just wasn't going to work. And this man looked at me, nearly voiceless, dead in the eye, and said, "Just suck on a lozenge. This is required." So I got on the bus and participated in the solo and ensemble competition just like Mr. Fish made me. And just like I knew was going to happen, when it came my turn to sing, I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I got a 16 out of 100 as a final score. Mr. Fish refused to look at me when he handed me my scorecard, but I was pissed. I was humiliated. I wanted revenge. So junior year comes around. I'm now 17-year-old female, and I've worked my butt off for this year's solo and ensemble. My voice has never sounded so good. I'm on top of the choir. The soprano who usually beats me out for solos gets left in the dust. Life is great. Solo and ensemble comes. Participation is required as usual. I make no indication that my humiliation from last year is still on my mind. I just absolutely knock the competition out of the park and get first chair. Bam! Love it. The entire choir loses their minds when it's announced. No one's made first chair in ages. Holy crap. I let that announcement simmer for a day or so. I can't remember how long, but not too long afterward, I sent an email to Mr. Fish, our assistant choir director, and the solo and ensemble director, announcing that I would be dropping from first chair. This was a Friday evening, so I knew the havoc it'd wreak. The house phone started ringing almost immediately. This was the early 2000s, and my mom said it was Mr. Fish for me. I answered, and we started off with vague pleasantries before he nearly demanded to know why I was dropping out. God, can I quote the rest of that phone call by heart? Yes, I thought you'd be curious. Do you remember last year's solo and ensemble when I told you I was sick and shouldn't participate, but you made me do it anyway and I humiliated myself? Yes? That's why. Have a good night, Mr. Fish. Click. Mr. Fish announced his retirement not even 3 weeks later, though he finished out the rest of the school year. I made first chair again senior year. Didn't he realize you may have damaged your vocal cords by trying to force you to sing? What an absolute tool. That director thought he was in charge, but the real lesson here is never underestimate a choir kid with a vendetta and a perfect pitch for payback. Great revenge. And our second story. I died at work, so my boss sold my car. Turns out he wished I stayed dead. I was 22, underpaid, and just dumb enough to think I'd figured life out because I had a full-time job and a car that wasn't held together with duct tape. The job was at a sawmill in the middle of nowhere, USA. You know, the kind of town where the biggest attraction is the Walmart 30 miles away and people still argue about the big storm of '09 like it was a historical event? The company offered employee housing, which sounded classy when the recruiter pitched it. We provide company apartments for our workers. Apartments, sure. What they actually had were glorified cells, tiny concrete rooms just big enough for a single bed, a small dresser, and the hope that one day you'd leave. The only luxury was that each room had its own toilet. The showers were 2 plastic stalls at the end of the hallway that looked like they'd seen some things. We had 15 people per floor and 2 showers. If you didn't time it right, you showered either at 4 a.m. or not at all. But you know what? I didn't care. I had a roof, I had a bed, I could park my pride and joy right under my window. A 2010 Honda Accord 3.5 V6. Gray, clean, purring like a happy cat on every startup. At 22, that car was the nicest thing I owned. Honestly, it was the nicest thing about my entire life. The pay at the sawmill wasn't great, but it was enough for gas, food, and the occasional six-pack. I wasn't dreaming big, not starving, and still having a car was good enough. Then my appendix decided to speed run its own suicide. It started like this. I'm on shift, stacking lumber, sweating like a sinner at church, when this sharp pain hits me in the lower right side of my stomach. At first I think, okay, maybe that gas station burrito was a mistake. 5 minutes later, I'm doubled over, seeing stars and trying not to throw up on the boards. Dude, you good? One of my coworkers, Tyler, asks. I think my guts are trying to leave the chat, I manage. He waves someone over. Next thing I know, there's a little circle around me like I'm some sacred ritual in the middle of the yard. And here comes Bob, my supervisor. Bob was the kind of guy who'd been in middle management too long. Permanent sunburn, cheap sunglasses, gut hanging over his belt, ego 3 miles wide. The sort of man who'd say, back in my day, about things that happened last Tuesday. He looks down at me, moaning on the ground, and goes, he doesn't look good. No crap, Sherlock. One of the guys says we should call an ambulance. Bob actually hesitates. Do we really need to? Last time we did that, it was 3 hours of paperwork. I groan louder on purpose. He squints at me like he's evaluating a defective palate. Yeah, all right, call 911, but make sure you clock him out first. I'm not paying overtime for him to lie down. That was my first hint. Bob might not be a great person. They get me into an ambulance, the paramedic pokes my stomach, and I nearly scream. Yeah, pretty classic appendicitis, he says. Is that bad, I ask? Only if you like keeping your organs. Then everything becomes a blur of morphine, bright lights, and signing forms I absolutely did not read. They knock me out, cut me open, fix me, and a day or two later I wake up with a fresh scar, a dry throat, and a nurse telling me, you're lucky you came in when you did, another 12 hours and it might have ruptured. Cool. Love that for me. After a few days, they discharge me. I'm sore, exhausted, and walking like someone who lost a fight with a coffee table, but alive. They give me painkillers and a warning not to lift anything heavy. Good thing I work with lumber, I mutter. I take a cab back to the employee housing. That's my first red flag. I had to take a cab. My Honda isn't in my spot under the window. At first I think maybe someone moved it. Maybe they towed it, or no. The whole parking lane is there. My spot's just empty. I stand there staring at the naked space where my car should be, like maybe if I look long enough, it'll respawn. Nothing. I limp inside, up the stairs, and head to my room. My key doesn't work. I try again. Nothing. I knock. The door opens. Some dude I've never seen before stands there in boxers and socks holding a bag of chips. Behind him I see my wall. Except it's not my crap in there. Different sheets, different stuff. He squints at me. Yeah? This is my room. No, it ain't, man. I just moved in last night. My brain cannot compute. Where's my stuff, I ask? And my car? He shrugs. Talk to the office, I guess. So I limp down to the office, holding my stitches with one hand, clutching my hospital folder with the other. Inside sits Denise, the housing manager, sipping coffee from a live, laugh, love mug, like she's not about to drop the dumbest sentence I've ever heard. She sees me and freezes. Oh my God. Hi, I say. I'm not dead. Surprise, I guess. Her eyes go wide. I thought you, Bob said, oh my God. What did Bob say exactly? She actually looks embarrassed, which is something. He told me you died in the hospital. They announced it in the break room. He said you weren't coming back and they needed the room for a replacement hire. My eye twitches. And my stuff? We cleared the room. Most of it went in the building dumpster. Some guys took a couple of things you wouldn't need. She winces. I'm sorry. I'm trying really, really hard not to lose it. What about my car, I ask? Gray Honda Accord that I own? That was parked right under my window? Denise bites her lip. That's when I know this is about to go from stupid to criminal. Bob said your family wanted it sold. He said he was helping them by handling it. I thought it was legit. You thought my family sent our middle manager to sell my car in a parking lot like it was a used lawnmower? She doesn't answer, which is an answer. I stand there for a moment, everything hitting me at once. The surgery pain, the lack of sleep, the missing car, the fact my entire life apparently got treated like someone shrugged and said, he's dead, toss it. Okay, I said quietly, we're done here. I walk back outside, sit down on the curb because standing hurts, and call the police. The officer who shows up is one of those middle-aged guys who's seen enough stupidity to be permanently unimpressed by it. Name tag says Harris. He listens as I explain the surgery, the housing, the eviction, the missing stuff, the sold car. He pinches the bridge of his nose like he's trying not to get a headache. Let me get this straight, he says. Your boss told everyone you died without checking, then sold your car, then had your belongings thrown away, and nobody thought to confirm any of this? Sounds about right. He sighs deeply. This town gets dumber every year. He takes my ID, registration, proof of ownership, all that. Then he asks Denise to come outside, and she repeats her part of the story, now sounding very small. I catch the exact moment Officer Harris mentally changes this from weird HR story to felony idiot show. So you authorized disposal of his belongings and allowed the sale of his vehicle based solely on verbal information from a coworker? I thought he was a supervisor. That's not what I asked, ma'am. He radios something in, gets the buyer's info from Denise, and tells me, sit tight, we're going to track down where your car went. Don't let anyone pressure you into dropping this, you understand? Yes, sir. We find the buyer that afternoon. Small town, word travels fast. He's a middle-aged guy with a goatee who looks like his hobbies include fishing and paying cash for shady deals. When he opens the door and sees me, alive and not buried, his face goes pale. Officer Harris introduces us. This is the owner of the Honda Accord you purchased, he says. The one you were told belonged to a deceased employee? The guy stares at me. You're not dead. Not yet, I say, though Bob tried to speedrun that outcome. The buyer drags his hand down his face. Look, man, I bought the car from Bob. He said you passed away in surgery and the family wanted to sell it quick to cover funeral costs or some crap. I paid him cash. He gave me the title. He pulls the paperwork out. The title is mine, but the signature's been forged so poorly a drunk raccoon could have done better. Harris holds it up. You realize this is forged, right? The buyer swears under his breath. I do now. I'm not even mad at the guy. He's an idiot, but not malicious. Bob is clearly the mastermind of this clown show. Look, I say, I don't want your money. I want my car back. You can go after Bob for your cash. He nods so fast I'm surprised his neck doesn't snap. Please, take it. I don't want to get dragged into this. It's in my garage. 10 minutes later, I'm staring at my Accord again like I've just found a long-lost dog. If I could have hugged it without popping stitches, I would have. The buyer hands me the keys with both hands like he's making a sacred offering. We're good? He asks. We're good, I say, but you might want to find a better source for your next vehicle. Now that the car is back, the investigation shifts fully to Bob. The cops start talking to people at the mill, and boy, do the stories start rolling in. One guy mentions his chainsaw disappeared after he left it in a shared storage room and never saw it again. Another mentions how Bob helped a worker who got deported by getting rid of his stuff so nobody else could take advantage. Translation, Bob took it. Someone else mentions payroll deductions. Yeah, he docked me $200 once for a safety violation, my coworker Tyler tells me later. Said I wasn't wearing the right hearing protection. I was, but he said contesting it would look bad. HR's dragged in, accounting's dragged in, papers start coming out, and the more they dig into Bob's track record, the worse it gets. He'd been approving fake safety fines and pocketing the money, submitting expense reports for housing repairs that never happened, charging the company for tools that magically never appeared, and now selling off an employee's car after prematurely declaring him dead. Corporate shows up in suits, which is always a good sign if you're not the guy under investigation. They asked to speak with me. My lawyer, whom I got the second the words forged title entered the chat, comes with me. We sit at a folding table in a sad little conference room that smells like coffee and sawdust. There's an HR lady with too much perfume, some dude from corporate, and a regional manager who looks like someone woke him up from a nap and told him, "Hey, one of your supervisors committed mild grand theft." The corporate dude starts, "First of all, we're very sorry this happened." "Are you sorry because it happened or because you got caught?" I ask. My lawyer kicks me lightly under the table. I don't care. They go through the whole "this behavior is not representative of our company value" speech. My lawyer lets them talk, then lays it out. Illegal eviction from housing, destruction of personal property, forged signature on vehicle title, theft by deception, emotional distress, medical vulnerability given that I was recovering from surgery while all this was happening. You could practically see the dollar signs spinning in that regional manager's head like a Vegas slot machine. They offer me a small settlement. My lawyer smiles like a shark and says, "That's adorable." No. In the end, between criminal pressure on Bob and civil liability on the company, they agree to reimburse the value of all my lost belongings, pay me for the illegal eviction, pay me for the attempted theft and forged document, pay almost a year's worth of my salary as additional compensation, and of course fire Bob so hard his grandkids will feel it. Meanwhile, Bob himself is getting charged personally, not prison level, but enough for a record and fines. He ends up having to contribute significantly to the compensation package as part of a civil agreement, which he absolutely deserves. You'd think the story ends there. It doesn't, because remember, this is pro-revenge, not mild justice with paperwork. Around this time, while everyone is talking about Bob, other stories start leaking. One of the guys from the night shift is flipping through his phone and laughing with someone else. "Dude, look at this. Bob really thought no one from town would see him," one says. I glance over. It's Bob, at a bar in the next town over. He's got his arm around a woman who's very, very not his wife. His hand is on her hip, and they're looking at each other like they're about to go commit adultery and bad decisions. "Is that?" I start. "Yup," the guy says. "That's Tammy from over at the diner, and that's our dear supervisor playing loyal husband." "You got more pictures?" I ask. "Yeah, a few. Why?" I think for a moment. "Would you trade them for a pack of beer?" He grins. "For some good beer? Absolutely." $12 later, I walk away with a tidy little collection of incriminating photos. Do I need them for the legal case? No. Do I feel bad for his wife? Yes. Do I feel bad enough to keep quiet? Absolutely not. Once the dust settles, once the settlement is signed, once Bob is officially unemployed and now known as that idiot who forged a title, I open a fresh email account, attach the pictures, and type out a simple message to his wife. No threats, no insults, just, "You don't know me, but I worked with your husband. You deserve to know who he's been spending time with when he says he's working late." I hit send. A few hours later, I'm back at the mill to sign my last bit of paperwork. There's tension in the air. People are whispering. "Did you hear?" someone says. "Hear what?" "Bob's wife just showed up." She storms into the office like a Category 5 hurricane in yoga pants. Through the window, I see her go straight up to Bob, who's there cleaning out his locker and looking like the world's saddest hot dog. She holds up her phone, shows him something, probably one of the pictures, and then wham! Even from outside the glass, I hear the slap. The entire front office freezes. Phones stop ringing, even the printer shuts up. She yells something I can't hear, jabs a finger into his chest 3 or 4 times, and then turns and walks out, head high, shoulders squared, not looking back. Someone later tells me she took his car, his dog, and started divorce proceedings within the week. All because he didn't want to deal with paperwork and thought, he's probably dead. I'll just profit from it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.